Well, good afternoon, friends and members of St. Martin Lutheran Church. This is Pastor Jim Chinnery. Today is Tuesday, October the 4th. We're officially in fall. I just saw in the news, though, that they did a leaf report, a foliage report, and that the main foliage falling from the trees is north of Houghton Lake. So why would you ever want to know that? I don't know. Some people do. Some people are interested. For me, foliage in fall, all it reminds me is that I'm going to have to start raking my yard, which it is what it is. As long as it's not raining, raking leaves isn't such a bad thing. So glad you could join us today, and as well as encourage and thank you for joining us. We're this online ministry that Randy and myself and Bonnie and Stephanie, we do during the week. The purpose of this is to try and stay connected to members of our church or whoever may be watching. We're never going to be looking at getting into the thousands of views with these. This isn't the point. Our point is to stay connected with our congregation or with anyone who wants to join, but as well as to take a look at God's Word for that week, for the upcoming worship. Because for those of you who do watch these regularly or participate in Bible studies and that, it does it not make worship, especially the focus on the scriptures, when you've had a chance to look at them and think about them ahead of time, I just think it adds a richness to worship. It's not a necessary one. I mean, you can go to church and not spend any time beforehand, but this is kind of next level discipleship, maybe we'd say. So thank you for joining us. And our Old Testament lesson for this week is a portion of the first chapter of the book of Ruth. So we're going to read that, and then we're going to take a look at the book of Ruth, the whole book as well. We're not going to just focus on our reading and kind of see what the book of Ruth has to say to us today. So we are in the book of Ruth, chapter 1, and we're reading up into verse 19. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons are Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These 2 Moabite wives, the name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. They lived there about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that you may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go on your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, first off, there's so many different themes and sub-themes we can talk about when we go through the book of Ruth. And it's important at the outset to understand that as we read in Ruth chapter 1, that this took place during the period of the Judges. And the span of the book of Ruth is about 12 years or so. Precisely when in the period of the Judges, we don't know. But it was, of course, during the period of the Judges before there was a king in Israel, before King Saul. But Ruth is also important. When you go through the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, and then Ruth. Ruth comes after the book of Judges for chronological reasons, but as well as Ruth, when you go through the book of Judges, and you get to the end, you see the book of Judges, one of the main themes in the book of Judges is what happens to the people of God, what happens to Israel when they remove God from their lives, when they become, as we might say today, functional atheists, meaning, I kind of believe in God, but God doesn't have anything to do with my daily life. I'm going to go about my business and just let God be God, and I'm going to do my thing. What happens when even the chosen people of God, the Israelites, remove God from their midst? And what we find in the book of Judges is awful, 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 horrible things happening, with the book ending with, and every man did what was right in his own eyes. So we come into the book of Ruth then, and we need a little bit of light. We need a little bit of joy, I think. And what do we find is one of the themes of the book of Ruth is that Ruth, an outsider, comes to the people of God and, in a sense, shows them what faith and what trust is. That Ruth, the outsider, comes and shows them what faith and trust is. So kind of a quick review of the story. We find that in the days of Judges, there was a famine in the land. So Elimelech and Naomi, they go to Moab with their two sons. Moab, if you pretty soon I'll be able to post a map and we'll be able to see the map on here. Go to Jerusalem, go around the northern part of the Dead Sea, and the land of Moab is on the eastern side of the Dead Sea. Where they settled, we don't know. But what happens? Well, Elimelech dies. Naomi's sons, Mahlon and Chilion, take wives, Orpah and Ruth. Mahlon and Chilion both die. And so Naomi decides she's going to return back to her homeland because she literally has nothing. With her family dead and not being in her own homeland, she has nothing. So she tells her daughters-in-law, I'm leaving, you stay here, God bless you. And both Orpah and Ruth first weep. Orpah agrees and stays back in Moab, but Ruth says no. And this is kind of the heart of the book of Ruth right here in chapter 1, verse 16, where Ruth says, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. That by Ruth declaring this to Naomi, what she's saying to her is, I know where I'm going. Even before she heard the word, you're accepted. So here's this outsider, this Moabite, who's going to make her way to Bethlehem, really taking a huge risk. She's risking that the people of Bethlehem are going to receive her. The people of Judah are going to accept her. And even amidst all of this, what we find is Naomi says, I'm so bitter. She changes her name to Mara, which means bitter in Hebrew. Why? Because she'd lost her husband, she'd lost her sons, and now she's looking at a very sketchy economic future. And when you continue through as well, you find there's issues of land and purchasing land, and Naomi says, well, my only option now is to sell my ancestral lands, and the sort of the implication is that people would probably take advantage of her situation, and very soon, what do we find? That Naomi and Ruth are poor. And so how are they going to live? Well, according to the book of Exodus, there was a law that landowners were not to harvest all of their fields, but leave a portion behind so that the poor could come and glean or pick up. In fact, this little statue that I always keep here, this is a statue of Ruth holding a bundle of wheat that she had presumably gleaned. And it's there where she bumps into Boaz. And as you continue reading, Boaz in chapter 2 says this to Naomi: I've been told all about you, what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. This is what Boaz is saying to Ruth: may the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. That's going to be important. So Boaz telling Ruth, blessing her and saying, may the wings of the Lord cover you, or kanaf in the Hebrew. That word for garment's going to come up again. So Ruth goes back and she says to Naomi, I met this guy Boaz, and Naomi, of course, comes up with a plan. You got to be careful in Scripture. Whenever the women come up with plans, you got to watch out. And so Naomi's plan is this: well, Boaz is a relative. And there's also a law in Israelite law. It's a law of the kinsman redeemer. And that is, if a woman's husband passes away, the next kin to the husband, it's his obligation and duty to marry her, to love her, to purchase the lands back, to have children through her so that her line can continue. And so Naomi's instruction to Ruth. Now, I want to say this too. When it gets to the part where Ruth goes at night and covers his feet and lays at his feet, there's all these kind of illicit. Now that this was not out of the realm of things that happened in Israelite. There was nothing illicit about this. This was Ruth, in a sense, making her intentions clear to Boaz, an overt proposal, if you will, and understanding that, the position Ruth is in, not only is she a foreigner in a land that during that time of the judges wasn't very nice to foreigners, she's making herself absolutely vulnerable from every point on, because she chose to trust and in faith to follow her mother-in-law Naomi and to trust in God. And so Boaz gets what she's doing. He agrees. And we read in Ruth chapter 4, the women said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer, or kinsman redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son. And they named him Obed, who was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So what do we have in the book of Ruth? It's the story of faith and trust and courage. It's the story of an outsider, a foreigner in the midst of the people of God, the chosen people of God, who in a sense shows the people of God what faith and trust is all about. We have Boaz acting according to the word of the Lord and being that kinsman redeemer, where he, if you remember initially, he had blessed Ruth and said, may the wing of the Lord cover you. But what Boaz does as sort of a symbolic gesture is he covers Ruth with his garment, that same kanaf, that same Hebrew. He covers her with a garment that offers her life and protection and, in a sense, salvation. And of course, Boaz pointing to the greatest kinsman redeemer of all, who of course is Christ himself, who says, in your faith, I'm going to clothe you. That we're clothed with Christ, the kanaf, the garment of Christ, that our faith, we're clothed with him, and that we, in a very real sense, die and have new life in him today. And we're promised a future, and we're promised protection under the wings of the Lord. And you just never, you can never, when you're reading through the book of Ruth, and maybe if you're reading it for the first time and you come to those words, and they named him Obed, he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. And what we find, of course, is Ruth becomes King David's great grandmother. And even in the long line of God working in his way that we don't always understand, we can only see the workings from our earthly perspective. What we see is God used a famine, which God often does, to do his work. and brings this foreigner back to Judah, back to the tribe that was going to give birth to the Messiah, and in fact uses her faith and her strength and her genealogy to bring forth the Messiah. The Messiah. So, there's a profound sense of the human condition in the book of Ruth, that belief or unbelief in God does not respect ethnic lines. And although we may consider in the church others foreigners, right, because they don't believe as we believe, what we know is that God has called us to embrace them. And, when we see in the story of Ruth that Ruth, the outsider, becomes a full member of the people of God, in fact, so revered and so honored is she that she would be listed in the genealogy of David and the Messiah, Christ Jesus himself. So there's the book of Ruth. I hope I did service to the book because I think there's many different focuses on this, but this just wonderful reminder of, in a time when God was removed from the people of Israel, a foreigner came and in a sense showed them what God working in a life could look like. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. Receive the Lord's blessing. Be a blessing to others. I love you guys. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you soon.